Hiya, my name is Rhiannon and I'm here to tell you a bit about my experience finding student housing in York. So I am a recent graduate from the University of York and I searched for accommodation in York in 2019 and 2020, and I'm just here to share my experience with you, give you a bit of an insight into the housing market there and give you some advice specifically related to that area, but also if you're not a student in York, this is also probably very applicable to you. So I started looking for accommodation in my first year in the December and January, which is very late for York. Probably took us about a month to find a property we were happy with and sign and be accepted, but we definitely took longer than average, and this time scale for York is probably about 2 to 3 weeks, especially if you are looking earlier. So our experience was fairly rocky. We had a bit of a disagreement in our flat about housemates. I think 10 of them viewed a property and didn't tell the rest of the flat, and I was unfortunately one of the ones who wasn't told. And then there was a massive group disagreement within these 10 people and they split off into 2 groups, and we all sort of mixed up and formed 3 groups, and a couple of people signed houses really early in November, which is probably when you should be looking sort of October, November time. So those of us who hadn't signed yet ended up looking fairly late because we didn't actually know other people had signed places, and over the course of maybe 2 or 3 weeks we viewed about 10 properties, which is a crazy amount of properties to view. The reason we viewed so many was because we were looking so late, only sort of the properties that people didn't want were left, and we wanted to make sure we were going to be happy in the house we were in. So we were being quite picky, especially because there were 5 of us to agree on this house, that we just kept looking and looking until we found one that we all liked. We went through an agency in York, which was not a positive experience. Basically, as you were looking around the houses, they would write down notes about you and your group and assign you to properties based on this, and you'd give them like a list of houses that you liked and they would decide if you could have them, and you have to wait to hear back from them, etc. after they did each round of allocation. So we were holding on for this agency and we didn't get approved to any of the properties, which was horrible because then in that time frame loads of them had gone. So agencies like that I would personally avoid because you have no control over the house you get basically, and you are relying on someone else. So after we were rejected from all these properties, we then had to continue our search, and loads of properties had gone within this time. We ended up finding one on a search engine like Accommodation For Students, which actually had no photos, but the description sounded really promising. It said it had recently been refurbished, there were 2 new bathrooms, 5 bedrooms. It was in the Hull Road Lawrence Street area, if you know, by the BP garage, which is a really good location. It's sort of equidistant between university and town. So we looked at this one and actually it was really good, and we think the reason it hadn't left the market yet was because there were no photos. So we were extremely lucky to secure that property, and we ended up re-signing onto that the next year as well, so we lived there for 2 years. So that was sort of my general experience, but we looked around about 10 houses and we were just consistently disappointed. The main things we were looking for in a house, which is why this one fit the bill, was a good kitchen. There were 5 of us and a lot of us like to cook. We also needed someone with parking because one of our housemates was a driver. We also wanted somewhere that had 5 bedrooms that were actually evenly sized and fairly sized, so basically so no one was shafted with a terrible bedroom. So our house cost us £135 a week with bills included, but now I know it's going for about 145, 150 because just of the rent inflation. So that's sort of what you're looking at for a bigger house in a good area in York, but you can definitely find cheaper, and there's definitely more expensive, nicer houses as well. Overall, our experience finding a house was really not ideal. We learnt a lot from it, and based on my experience I would tell you, especially if you're in York, look early, start looking around the end of October or November time. One of the reasons that I started looking so late was because of housemates, so I would really recommend reaching out to people early and trying to sort out some groups and being really proactive with it. Basically don't wait for people to approach you, because if they don't, you will leave it too late. I would also say remain resilient in your search. Don't just sign something out of panic. If there's something specific you want in a property, keep looking and you should find it. Like our 9th property was the one that we ended up liking. It was a really good house. Another challenge we faced with our house was actually one of our group members dropped out in August and we were due to move in the September, which was a very stressful experience again. So we had to post an ad on Facebook sort of saying we've got a spare room, and we had to advertise the room, and we had to talk to potential tenants that were going to move in and work out who would be the best fit for our house, which again was quite a stressful experience because we needed that room filled for the rent to be paid, but we wanted the right person. But equally, we didn't want the right person to go too quickly and go on to another house, so we had to sort of move really quickly. So that was again a stressful experience. We actually have a website called studenthousemates.com, which will be linked down below, and this streamlines that process for you massively and would have saved me so much stress had it been around at the time. So I would definitely recommend looking into that if you end up in a similar situation. It was about 2-3 weeks to secure a housemate who we were all happy with, and who was happy to move in with us, through lots of Zoom calls and vetting, and it was just not the best experience. So I would fully recommend using something like Student Housemates. In our second year we decided to re-sign our house. This was in the thrusts of the pandemic and lockdown, so we couldn't actually view any properties anyway, but it made it very, very smooth for third year. And if you do like your house and your housemates, I would definitely consider re-signing a house just to take that pressure off. If people are moving out of the house, you can find alternative tenants instead of finding a new place entirely. And unfortunately at the moment we do need to be realistic about rent prices, and I know how much they are increasing in York, so just to bear this in mind when you are searching. You can use Accommodation for Students' website to see all the properties. We have loads and loads on there, so I really would recommend just having a browse and continuously going on the website every few weeks or every few days to see what else is up there that's new. I hope this has given you a bit of an insight into the housing market in York and how you can best prepare for your hunt and not do what I did. Have a great day, and thank you for watching.